Olympian Derek Redmond. He holds gold medals in the 4x400 relay in both the World, European, and Commonwealth Games. He once held the British record and European record for the 400-meter sprint, and he is perhaps best known for his iconic finish at the 1992 Barcelona games, where during the semifinals of the 400-meter sprint, his hamstring tore, and you could see him finishing the race with his father's assistance. One of the most iconic and important moments in Olympic history. To help me interview Derek, I wanted to invite another friend and colleague, Mr. James Raybould. James is also a Brit. He is an accomplished triathlete himself, an amazing athlete himself, and a big fan of Derek's as well. So I think this is going to be a great interview about athletics, about passion and perseverance. So gentlemen, welcome to 99 Pages. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So Derek, I want to start with you. I want to start with your upbringing. What was early life like for you, and some of your more formative experiences in your childhood that prepped you for a career in athletics?
To be honest, it was just a regular upbringing. I was fortunate to have both of my parents around. And I say that because, we hear and read so many stories of young people that don't have both parents around. I mean, both my parents were around. I was brought up in humble beginnings. James and I would call it, brought up in a council house. You guys would say the projects, similar sort of thing. And my parents were working class. They worked hard. And I kind of got into track and field really just because I liked running and jumping. Literally, I was 7 years of age and I used to run and jump around the house. And my parents said, look, we're going to take you to the local track and field club because it's safer to be there because you won't break anything in the house, or more important, you won't break anything else on you. At least if you're in the right kind of, surroundings, you can have fun. And that was pretty much, how I got into it. At that age, there was no burning desire to be an Olympic athlete. And if I'm honest, I didn't even know what the Olympics was at the age of 7. So, pretty humble beginnings. And went to, regular schools and was pretty good at most sports. There was a little bit of, sort of talent to be shown there. But again, at that young age, nothing that kind of stood out. That didn't really happen till I was maybe in my mid-teens.
So Derek, when did you start figuring out, this isn't just like a fun thing to impress the girls. This is something where actually I can do this at a, elite level?
Well, I'm still trying to find that topic that will impress the girls. So, at 55, I've not nailed that one yet, But I mean, as I say, as I got into secondary school or high school, then the main 3 sports that I was into was basketball, rugby, and track. And by then, I was pretty much the quickest kid in my age group, one of the quickest kids in the area. And it looked like the track and field route was where I wanted to go. But in my early years, my heart was with basketball. And that's what I wanted to go. Once I had left high school, I wanted to come to the States, get into university, get on a basketball scholarship, and hopefully end up in the NBA. I mean, who doesn't? And actually, it was the failure of me making it as a basketball player that made me say, you know what, I'm going to give the track and field a go. Because I did try out for a few universities, didn't make it in any of them. And I remember my dad came and joined me out in the States for a couple of weeks. And, after being turned down by yet another university, my old man said, let's go and have a look at the track, because I was doing both at the same time. And went and had a look at the track and bumped into one of the coaches, my dad being someone who is very easygoing and gets chatting to people. And we're looking and watching all these guys train. And my dad got chatting to the coach, and the coach turned around and looked at me and goes, hey, Mr. Redmond, come here. Oh my God, I can't believe you're here. And this guy knows me. And he knew of me because by this time I was a junior international. Coming into my senior years, I was ranked in the top 10 or 15 in the world. So it had kind of gone on to that level. And even at that, I still wanted to play basketball. And he sort of said, look, we could talk about this seriously if you want to come to school. And it was a bit of a joke with my dad. And my dad said, what do you think? And I said, oh, yeah, I'll think about it. My dad, for a joke, turned around and said, look, we're already here. We don't want you back at home. Just stay here. As a bit of a joke. And I went, all right, then let's give it a go. And it was, again, kind of naturally and just as a matter of fact, because still, even as a junior international and someone who's running quick, you kind of deal with your own level of performance. And it's not until you stop and look around and see how much you are better than, you know, the rest of your compatriots, you realize, hold on, there's something here. So I was just doing what I did, and I didn't really stop and look around or behind me to see, you know, to see what everybody else was doing. And I was at that point having fun. And I guess, to answer your question, James, that's when it really became serious, you know, for me. And that's when it was like, I could really do something with this. And I dropped all the other sports, the basketball, the rugby, and just concentrated on track and field.
And when did you, oh, go ahead. I was going to say,
well, finish your question, James, please.
I was going to say, and then when did you first think of, you know, gold? Like, truly you want to be the single best, fastest runner in the entire world?
I would say my life really changed on a serious level, as in talking about Olympic Games, talking about being the best in the world, talking about even thinking about world records, was the 27th of July, 1985 at 11:46 p.m. Now you might think, wow, how can he be so specific? So the 27th of July, 1985 at 11:45 p.m., I ran in my first, what's now known as Golden League race. In my days, they were called, they're called Diamond League now. In my days, they were called Golden League races. So it's a Grand Prix series that goes all around Europe, and you can amass points. And if you win all your races in the Grand Prix series, you used to be able to win your share of $1 million. In my day, in gold, but now it's in diamond. And one of the athletics meetings is in Norway, in Oslo. And it was my first ever Golden League athletics meeting. And my agent managed to get me a lane. I was just glad to be in the race. And to cut a very long story short, I won it and I broke the British record. And I went from being, you know, a decent 400 meter runner to all of a sudden being ranked in the top 5 in the world. And it was, you know, literally from the minute after that race, my life changed. My attitude changed. People's attitudes towards me changed. I was talking to someone earlier on today, and I remember saying, leading up to that race, in my sort of senior years, I was always writing to companies for sponsorship, and it was a bit of a, you know, a family joke. Everything I ate and drank, if I hadn't written to them for sponsorship, you know, then it wasn't worth eating or drinking. Whatever I ate, we found an address on the back, and we'd write to them for, could you sponsor this young athlete, this and that. Everybody turned around and said, you know, thank you, but no thank you, but good luck. And then the minute I broke this record, I had phones going for sponsorship for this. That was when if you want to find a specific turning point, that was definitely it. And that's when my mind focused on the Olympic Games in 1988, and, you know, other championships coming up. We had the Europeans, the Commonwealths coming up in 86. We had a World Championships in 87. We had the Olympics in 88. And that's when it became very serious.
What a brilliant answer to that question. Like, you can identify the moment where your life transitioned from amateur to like professional athlete like Absolutely. That. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. You know, James, I wanted to bring you in and ask you the question. Like, so you must have been, I imagine, in your early 20s around this time when Derek is emerging, and you're an avid British athlete yourself. Like, when you saw Derek come onto the stage, what did you see? What did you feel? And can you help walk us through what Derek represents in British athletics?
Well, I think one thing to start with is that athletics, certainly in the 80s, were, you know, a bigger deal in the UK than they are in the US. Like, in the US, it's sort of like, you know, the Olympics come around for about a month, you know, Carl Lewis and people like that are suddenly, you know, on the front cover of everything. In the UK, you know, I grew up watching the Commonwealth Games, which is essentially a competition for all people in the Commonwealth. I grew up watching the European Championships. So I definitely remember starting in sort of myself in 84 for the Olympics, and 86 for the European Championships, just following this stuff. And, you know, there's Derek will know there's a bunch of very famous middle distance runners, you know, Steve Ovett, Steve Cram, Seb Coe, etc. And so, you know, athletics had, I think still has, a certain kind of cultural importance in the UK that I think it does in the US as well, but really it's just, you know, Carl Lewis, the Olympic stuff, and then it kind of goes away. And so I definitely remember watching, European Championships, Commonwealth Games, and like just this sort of there's new force coming on. And then obviously, as we get to a little bit later, as we get to the 1991 World Championships, which I'm sure we'll get to, probably the most I've like shouted at a TV screen in my life. And then obviously the 1992 Olympics, it goes to like a whole nother level.
Absolutely. Oh man, let's go ahead and dive in, because to make this the most accessible possible to a viewer who may not, who may only know you from your 1992 Olympic story, let's go ahead and bring up a photo of you. So for those who have not seen this clip, pause this video now, go to YouTube and Google Derek Redmond 1992 Barcelona Olympics and watch this amazing event. And so just, no emotions. It's just what you see is Derek starting the race, and midway his hamstring tears and he gets up. You can see the pain and the passion in his face. He gets up and he tries to finish the race. And then you see this other man, it's his father, coming out and helping him across the line. Derek, I'd love to just take a moment and have you walk us through what you saw, what you felt. And I mean, there's clearly a lot of pain and emotion going through your head and heart right now. When you look at these photos, what memories and emotions surface?
I this is something, unfortunately, I think if I ever lost my memory, this would be the one thing that would stay in that memory bank. I mean, this will never, ever go away. But the actual story starts 4 years prior to this.
Please.
So, my first Olympics was 1988. And I think I was ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the world, pretty much expected to make the final of the individual 400, the final of the mile relay, 4x400 meter relay, and possibly pick up 2 medals. I was certainly believing that I could do that. And, it was a possibility. And warming up for the first round of the individual 400 meters. So I was on the warm-up track. I could see the main stadium, a few yards away, and I'm doing my warm-up. And part of the way through my warm-up, I snapped one of my Achilles tendons, and that put pay to my first Olympic Games. It was over before it had even started. So that was a real tough baptism of Olympic competition for me, because I never walked into the Olympic Stadium and walked on the track. I sat in the stands, but I never managed to walk into the stadium and walk onto the track. So that kind of fueled me for 4 years to make sure that I get it right in Barcelona. And on the cold winter nights of the UK training, that was the thought that was in my head. That was the one thing when I had one more rep to do. I had no more energy. It was raining. It was 2 degrees. I'm absolutely spent, and I've got another rep to do. That image would come back to me, and I would use that to fuel my way through. So fast forward into 1992, I'd get myself in great shape. I still had a few injury problems leading up to it. Between 88 and 92, I've had something like 7 or 8 different surgeries and operations on different parts of my body. But we get myself in shape. And actually, we got to the point where I was one of the favourites to medal. And the semi-final was the 3rd round. So I won the 1st round. I was the fastest qualifier out of all the 400-meter runners. I easily won the 2nd round. And it's come to the semi-final. And to be honest, barring any catastrophes, I was going to qualify for the final. I had a great warm-up. My mind was right. Everything was going okay. The race starts. I run the first 150, and then I actually heard a sound, first of all. And it was like a pop. And I thought it was something in the crowd, but it's internally. And I remember thinking, because when you're running and you're in your flow, you're in the zone, you don't really hear what's happening. You're aware of sound and cheering, but you can't pick out any specific noise or sound or anything. So for me to hear that, I thought, come on, Redmond, you're not concentrating, focus. And I carried on running for maybe 2 or 3 more strides. And then I just felt this serious pain. And then that's when I realized, my hamstring's gone. And I grabbed the back of my leg, and I won't say to you what I actually said, but there was a few expletives that came out. And that was it. I just hit the deck, and I just couldn't believe it. And again, the language, and I was just thinking, why me? And I couldn't believe it. And I remember slapping the track at one point, and I was just so frustrated, so annoyed, so upset with the whole situation. Again at the Olympic Games, and then that went on for, I don't know, 15 seconds, if that. And then my mind clicked back into gear, because I always say this to people, and I'm sure, James, you can understand this and relate to this. To be the best, you've got to have two things going through. Physically, you've got to be in shape, which is kind of obvious, but mentally, you need to be in shape as well. And you are not going to win, a very high level if both of those aren't firing on all cylinders. You cannot do it mentally and not physically. And you can't do it physically and not mentally. You need both of those situations working. And for me, I was in the zone physically and mentally. There's no doubts about that. So after 15 seconds of going down and saying a few choice words, I remembered where I was. I'm in the Olympic Games. I'm in the Olympic semi-final. And the qualifying criteria was, out of a field of 8, it was the first 4 to cross the line that would go to the final 48 hours later. So I kind of sat up and looked to see where the athletes were. And at this point, they've obviously continued running, and they've got about 110, 120 meters to go. And the thought that went through my mind was, if I get up now and start running, I'll catch them. And that is what went through my mind. And, whenever I share that with people, especially, to an audience, they all start laughing, which, when you think of it now, is comical. But when you are focused and your mind is on the task, it was no joke. And that's why I got up and started hobbling. I then hobble 50 meters. So I'm now halfway around. I'm at the 200 meter mark, still thinking I'm going to catch these guys. And I remember at the 200, I decided to kind of just look across the track to see how much I was gaining on these guys. And the track was empty. These guys are finished. They've finished the race. They've been interviewed. They've gone to the change rooms, had a shower, their hair's dry. I mean, this is over. And that was the point, if you like, where the mental side caught up with the physical side. And it was almost like back to reality. And I realized it's all over. And I had two options, really: to stop and give up, or to finish. And instantly I decided I'm going to finish this race. And the reason I wanted to finish was quite simple. I didn't want to be beaten by the Olympic Games again. I could live with finishing 8th and getting knocked out, but I couldn't live with not finishing. And that was the only reason I was, going to continue. Excuse me. So I continued hobbling round. And at this point now, there's medical staff, there's officials, all trying to get me off the track. And I'm sort of saying, leave me alone, I want to finish. They haven't got a clue what's going on. So I do that sort of top bend, fending off a few people. And as I'm just about to enter the home straight, from behind me, from the left-hand side, I could sense this person coming towards me. And I was just about to sort of fend them off as well. And then I heard the distinctive voice of my dad. And my dad sounds like Barry White, very deep voice. And if there's youngsters on it who haven't got a clue who Barry White is, maybe you want to pause this, put in Barry White and listen to that guy sing. Deepest voice in the world. The guy can move furniture just by singing. And I heard my dad say, "Derek, it's me. You don't need to do this." And I just turned to him, and I should have said, "What the hell are you doing here?" But all I actually said was, "Get me back into lane 5. I want to finish this race. And I was, the emotions were there. I was shouting. I was swearing. There's spit coming out my mouth. I'm just, in a different place. And I just had to finish. And my dad could obviously see that and said, okay, we'll finish together. And then he managed to get me from a hobble to a walk, which speed-wise really wasn't any difference. However, I was putting less pressure on my hamstring. And if you speak to my old man, the reason he came onto the track is because initially he wanted to stop me. And he wanted to stop me because we didn't know how serious the hamstring was. We had the relay 6 or so days later. There may have been a chance that we could have got some treatment and I competed in the relay. But me continuing to run would have damaged the hamstring even more. But once he could see I was adamant that I wanted to finish, then he just wanted to help me finish the easiest way possible and with the least amount of damage, further damage done to my hamstring. And what you see obviously on the video is what you get. And unfortunately, the hamstring was way too damaged for me to be able to compete in the relay. And in fact, I've never run a 400 since. So it was my last ever 400. And to finish my last ever 400 level with my dad is not something that I can say I'm particularly proud of, because my dad wasn't the quickest 400 meter runner out there. So we do laugh and joke about it. But no, seriously, it was, if it was going to end in the way that it did, then I couldn't have thought a better person to be by my side than my dad.
Derek, when did you first get a sense that this is going to be a bigger thing than my race is over? That was a bit odd because my dad was there and it sort of would be with you,
Yeah.
32, 33 years later.
Do you know what? The day after, because I was distraught. There was only one person in the world, and this is not even including my dad, or including my dad, but he wasn't the person. There was only one person in the world who managed to make me smile over the next 24 hours. So when, I went off the track, because my dad wasn't staying in the Olympic Village, him and my coach were staying in another hotel. They had limited access. So obviously my dad had got into a position where he really shouldn't be. And he came into one of the first medical rooms and this and that. And then once the coaches and a few of the British staff, if you like, British teammates, staff came to managers, and goodness knows what came over. My dad was sort of asked, look, we need to get you out. So my dad went, and I said, I'll catch you later. And I was just distraught. There was nothing I could do or anything. Nobody could say anything. And one of my training partners who lives out in America, although he's a Nigerian athlete, he lived in a place called Azusa, which I'm not sure if you know of Azusa. It's outside of California. And he went to Azusa Pacific University. His name was Innocent Egbenike, 400 meter runner, ran 44.1. Yeah, he's run 44.17, I think. It was the African record at the time. He ran that against me, absolutely hammered me in that race, but that's another story. And he's one of my best friends. We trained quite a lot together. And I remember getting on one of the buses to go from the warm-up track back to the village. And obviously all the athletes had seen this, and now it's kind of gone round. This is maybe a few hours later. And I'm waiting for the bus, and I've had people come up to me and condole me and say, oh, you console me, and say, oh my goodness, this and that. Athletes from all over the world, athletes I don't even know. There was an American sprinter by the name of Evelyn Ashford from, I think she won gold in
84, I think.
84. But there was a major championship where she pulled her hamstring really bad in the 100 meters. And she had been through it. And I knew of her and knew her to say hello to. And I remember seeing her, I was walking through somewhere, and she came up to me and she gave me the biggest hug in the world. And she said, I know there are no words to express what you've gone through, but I just want to say I've been there, and if you want to have a conversation, I'm here. Which I thought was one of the nicest things, because we didn't know each other that well, but a beautiful thing for her to say. And I got on the coach, and I remember the coach had loads of people on. I got on it, and it went silent. Everyone just stopped, and they all looked at me, and then they all put their heads down and looked at their feet, because they had no idea what to say or anything. And this is all sportsmen and women, all Olympians from different fields. And I just got on him, and Innocent was on there, and he recognized the whole situation straight away. And he said to me, Derek, and I said, yeah, and I won't do his impersonation with his half African, half English, half American accent. And he said to me, Derek, come and sit up here. And he stood up and he went, oh, my hamstring, where's my dad? Where's my dad? Like and it was just the way that he said it. I said, oh, you like that. And he just said, hey, come here, my brother, come here. And everyone kind of laughed and went, whew, that's okay, because they just had no idea of how I was going to be. And he's still, to my day, one of my greatest friends. And if anyone could get away, it was him. But to answer your question proper, James, that was a bit of an indication of what it was going to be like. The following day, I got asked if I would do a press conference, which I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do the press conference. Look, and they said, look, the whole world wants to do a press conference. Will you? I said, okay, I'll do it. And they said, look, can you speak to your dad? You want your dad here? So they brought my dad in. And I remember going into this press conference, and I walked into this room. It was outside, and I'm still, and really, really unconsolable is the only word that I can muster up. And my coach is there, my dad's there, and we're waiting outside, and I can hear people inside, the murmuring of people. And I walked into this room, and I kid you not, there must have been 300 people in this room from the world's press, cameras, TV cameras, normal cameras, journalists with notepads. This room was jam-packed with reporters and journalists to talk about this incident. Wow, and I think the press conference went on for about an hour and 40 minutes, hour and a half, which normally they're 10, 15 minutes and then you're out of it. And I just was talking how I feel and this and that. And then the day after that, loads of newspapers are delivered to the Olympic Village, all different nationalities. And I got sent a massive stack of newspapers, not just English speaking, all different from different countries. And I was on the front, in some cases the middle and the back page of most of these things. And I had no idea that this whole incident, that as far as I was concerned, I failed at, this failing moment was going to be accepted in the way that it was. And 30 odd years later, or 30 years later, whatever it is, to have people still talk about it, message me about it, email me, comment on posts and this and that. It's just crazy. Every 4 years, my dad and I get surprised when we get asked to do interviews with him, and my dad will say, "They're still going on about that. They're still talking about that." It's just incredible how that moment touched a lot of people's lives. And the crazy thing is, it's touched lives of people that weren't even born when it happened. I get a lot of people talking to me, said, I wasn't born in 1992, but so-and-so showed me this. A friend of mine sent me this. Like, my goodness, you helped me through this. You helped me through that. And I still am shocked, and forgive me for going on, but I am shocked on what that one incident in one period of my life, 1 5-minute period in my life, has done for so many people over the last 29 years. It's just crazy. Really, really is.
Derek, I got to tell you, it's like, I'm not, much of, like, definitely not in sprinting or any of athletic circumstances. Like, I'm nowhere near that realm. And watching that video and watching that clip, what it even when I go through struggles in my personal life or professional life that are maybe removed from athletics, it's just so much translates. Because I think, and James, I'd love to hear your thoughts. When I see that image of you and I see that relationship with your father, what I see is a beautiful display of your humanity. And, you can just see, like, raw human emotion in its purest form, and then your dependence on your father as you finish a task you set out to do. In many ways, Derek, it's like, I almost view that as more valuable than any gold medal that you could ever possibly win. It's just such a powerful moment.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the first to have said that, and I'm a lot older, a lot grayer, a bit wider, a lot slower, but hopefully a bit wiser. And
yes, sir.
You're right. There's so much more I see now from that than when I did back then. I've sat down with my wife, and we laugh and joke about it, and she'll say, can you take the bins out? What's your hamstring? And we have a bit of fun and all sorts of stuff. But we've had serious conversations, and something will come up. And my wife's my PA. She's my best friend. She's my PA, and she'll say, "Oh, this has come through. Blah 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 blah. They want to do an interview of this, that." And she said, "It's crazy, And we had a discussion once on exactly what you said. Why do we think it's lasted the test of time? And I think there's two things that really, to me, come to light. One, it was because my dad came to my aid. And my wife once said to me, it wouldn't have been the same if it was a teammate, a coach, an official. It wouldn't have had that same impact on the rest of the world. It was your dad. And that meant a lot to pretty much every parent in the world. I wasn't a parent at the time. That was number one. And she said that the other thing is number two, is she said, if you are not, that close to the Olympics or know anybody who trains and is competing, and you are just a viewer of the Olympic game, you see, and so you should, you see these Olympians as absolute gods and they are the epitome of the best of the best. So nothing's ever going to go wrong with them. And all of a sudden, hang on a minute, they're not machines, they are human. They have emotions. It goes wrong. They cry, we cry, and I think all of a sudden it brought it down to a human kind of level. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you've got, what you can do, what you can't do, what you haven't got. You could be the best in the world doing your thing, and it can all go wrong. And I think that kind of is one of the things that people really took from it, that it doesn't matter who you are or how good you are, it can be taken away in one way, shape or form as quick as a blink of an eye. So for me, they're the two things that I think bring it to reality and not just these superhuman athletes on TV.
Yes, sir. Yeah. James, please.
Yeah, I think the other piece, and you mentioned this in the book, is I think I loved your point about, you can control what you can control, and you control, you could walk. Like you could just, you couldn't win the race, they're gone, but you could control just like getting to the finish line. And I feel like that for me is what's resonated the most. Is just like, there's a bunch of stuff I can't control. But in this quote, narrow lane, pun intended, with that, what you're talking about, I can control this stuff. And absolutely. I think that's what stuck with me the most.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, James. I talk about, controlling the controllables in an uncontrollable world. And I guess you're referring to my goal setting triangle. I kind of have it in three levels: the actual goal, which was Olympic gold medal, the performance that will hopefully take you to that gold medal, and then all the things that you have to do to produce that performance. And that's the only bit you got control over. The diet, the training, the rest, the medical side, all the work that you've got to do and can say yes to and can say no to. That's the only bit you can control. But if you take care of all of that, then you have a chance of achieving the performance that you want. And if you can achieve that performance you want, you've got a chance of winning the medal. But I can't stop anybody running quicker than me. So I cannot control whether I win or don't win an Olympic medal. And it's not being defeatist, it's kind of being realist, because I could be in shape to run 43 seconds flat, but I can't stop somebody running 42.9. If I'm in shape to run 42.9, I can't stop somebody running 42.8. You got no control over that. So that was something that I could do. And I did it for me because I had to live with myself for the rest of my life. It took me 2 years to be able to talk about it. And watch it and be interviewed. To be honest with you, it took my dad a little bit longer, although he wasn't happy with it at all. My dad's kind of gone around in a circle because he couldn't, then he could, and now he doesn't particularly like talking about it again now. He will, but I still think it possibly hurts him more now than it hurts me more now, if I'm honest with you. It's really crazy. He gets quite frustrated and annoyed and very short if he has to talk about that, and maybe it's because he's answered all the questions 1,000 times and he can't tell anybody any more than what he's already said. I don't know. So it's one of those things that I had to do for me.
Super interesting. And you started referencing the book, which is what I would love to talk about next. And so, you channeled your experiences in athletics, and they're far deeper than just this one race. I want to make sure everybody understands that Derek's athletic history is very deep and worth a visit in your reading journey. But you wrote this book, Sport is a Business, business is a sport. And, you know, what is so fascinating to me, Derek, is your ability to translate that work ethic, the professional ethic of athletics, into what the vast majority of us experience in a day-to-day life. I want to start out by asking you, like, why even write this book? What inspired this book? What's the origin story?
Great question. So the book really came about because of my experience, not only in sport, but also in business. So, you know, once I got out of professional sport, which wasn't track and field, it went on to being professional in basketball and then rugby. And then I got out of professional sport. I had
then, if I'm not mistaken, you also went into motocross at some point as well.
Motorcycling. I raced bikes, and then I got into kickboxing, and I mean, now at 55, I'm a semi-pro boxer. But again, that's just, you know, sort of. But you know, exactly. You know, I kind of got into the real bad world of having to, you know, work for a living. Not that that wasn't working, but you know, and I tried a couple of things, and what really set me off on this was the failure of a business. So I got out of professional sport and I became a personal trainer, and then I organically went from personal training to designing gyms and then making my own gym and fitness equipment. Myself and my business partner, who happened to be my strength and conditioning coach when I was a competitor. And we ended up forming a business called Olympex. And we made and manufactured weights equipment. And we had 3 different ranges. And we used to sell CV equipment, treadmills, bikes, all sorts of stuff. And that business became very, very successful very quickly. And we hit the gym and fitness industry in a big way in an 18-month, 2-year period. And as quick as we went up was as quick as it went down. And, you know, another 2 years later, that business went bankrupt. And I personally went bankrupt for a little under £3 million. And, you know, lost everything. I think it's 2.7 million. I lost everything, and goodness knows what. I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, this was, you know, I'm back to rock bottom. I'm back to being on the back straight on my back, as far as I was concerned. And I remember sort of needing my mum and dad to bail me out and, you know, use their good name and credit to rent an apartment and all sorts of stuff and get myself a car. And I fell into the speaking world. And when I say I fell into it, I got invited to go and speak and share my experiences, not just as an athlete, but what happened with my business. And I did that. And the person who booked me said, you know, how many of these do you do? And I said, that was the first one. And I said, wow, you know, there's something there. So I decided to go down the route of speaking. And I remember talking to my dad about it, because me and my dad still are very close. You know, we you know, what you saw in Barcelona was really the tip of the iceberg to our relationship. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and my dad had invested money in my gym and fitness equipment business, you know, prior, and had lost money. But he's my dad, and, you know, I remember sitting down, he's successful in business himself, sitting down what I was going to do. And he said, so what are you going to do different? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I'm not being funny. I hope you don't run this new business in the same way that you ran the old business, because the future's not going to look great. So again, in jest, I turned around and said, well, the only other thing that I've done successful was my athletics career. So my dad said, so why don't you run it in exactly the same way as you go, or go about it in the same way as you did your athletics career? And I was like, And that's what made me start to treat my speaking business like my sport. So the goal setting triangle that I referred to is something that my sports psychologist told me about. One of the first things I did was set myself a new goal setting triangle of all the things that I needed to do. And I started using the same theories and principles in this business that I did in sport. And it seemed to show like it was the right thing to be doing, and showing it was the right approach to take. And the more I did, the more successful. And here we are. I've been speaking now 20 odd years, and it's still going strong. So in 2017, I decided to, to write this book for a couple of reasons. And you'll notice it's not the thickest book in the world. And there is good reasons for that. So I'm actually dyslexic. So I don't read a lot. I do read, but not a lot. And when I do read, generally most paragraphs I will have to read 3 times before it sinks in and I get it right. And it's not that I can't read or read quick, but I see letters and words jumbled up and in different places and all that sort of stuff. And when I decided to write this book, I had the opportunity for someone to write it for me. And I said, no, I'm going to write it myself. And I did work with a guy out in LA who put the basis together. And then I completely just wrote it word for word myself. My wife then took it and corrected every other word that was either in the wrong way around or spelled wrong. And that's how we went from it. And I just wanted to show that actually there's a lot to be said for the mindset that you approach something in, as opposed to anything else. And, silly little things like, I don't see there are problems in worlds. I see them as challenges. Now, it's just a one-word change from problem to challenge. But if I said to you guys, I've got a problem, you might think, oh, God, what's he going to throw on me? But if I say, guys, I've got a challenge, you're going to say, okay, what's the challenge then? And straight away, you're more up for taking on a challenge than you are taking on a problem. It's the same situation, but it's the approach that you take. And that's kind of what I wanted to get across to people, because people could see how successful sportsmen and women go about their business. And they like that, and they're into a sport and whatever, and they look up to all these great sportsmen and women, and they all want to be like them. Well, do you know what? It's their mindset that's got them there, not just their ability. And I always argue, if you get to an Olympic Games and you get to the 100 meters final, guess what? We know you got talent because you've just made the final of the Olympic Games. But what is the difference between finishing first and finishing 8th? And it's not anything physical. It's more mental. And whether you can keep it together, whether you can produce it when it matters at the right time. So there's a lot of things that come into that, but actually they're not physical. And, I'll back that up by saying an hour before any final, there's nothing you can do physically to improve the performance that's going to happen in an hour's time, because you've done all your training. But there's a hell of a lot that can happen mentally that changes the way you perform. So therefore, if it can have an effect at such a close time, imagine what you could do with that mental state leading up to it over a 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years or whatever. So that's kind of what prompted me to that. And I've been speaking for many years on, as I always used to say, the mindset of a successful business person is no different to the mindset of a successful sports person. The only difference is the arena that they perform in.
Right.
And,
James, I'd actually love to get your thoughts on this too, because, you're also an athlete and you've read Derek's book. Do you find that same level of translation between your athletic mental state and your business mental state in your professional life?
I think so. I think that I really like his triangle where I think you and I, or as you have, we have goals. They might be more around hitting some kind of OKR, or some kind of number, etc. And obviously over here, it's more like can I do this many pull-ups, or can I finish this race this fast? And I think the same thing when you're obviously a world-class salesperson and you're figuring out across, here are my accounts and here's the relationship I need to build and here's the outcome I'm hoping to drive. And that's not that different from here's the event I'm trying to train for and here's the different session I need to do and here's what I need to be. And I think they're fairly similar. I guess, Derek, I'd love to hear, are there specific mental exercises that you did and do? It could be meditation, could be visualization. I'm sure there's, an hour before, what are you actually doing to make sure that you are primed for either giving an amazing speech or in the past giving an amazing athletic performance?
For me, visualization was a massive, massive part of my arsenal, if you like, for getting myself ready for a major championship. And I'm talking visualization from 2-3 years out from Olympic Games. Even though you've got world championships and Commonwealth Games and goodness knows what, the big one was the Olympic Games. Of course, I did stuff on the others as well leading up to it. But, you know, so much focus was on the Olympic Games. I used to run Olympic finals in my head. Oh, I wouldn't say daily, but it would be weekly. And I got to the point when I used to start doing visualization, I used to lie down in a room, switch the lights out, and I used to have to really focus and put myself on the track, smelling the smells that I'm used to smelling on the track, hearing the sounds, all that sort of stuff, and, you know, really building that picture up before I even ran. And then I used to get to a point where I could do that while I was driving. You know, I could almost daydream and visualize, at that point. And I used to run races from lane 1, from lane 4, from lane 8 in beautiful sunshine, rain, hail, snow, thunder, lightning, you name it. Other athletes going off quick, going off slow, me going off slow, me going off quick, me falling over, getting up, them falling over, getting up, being struck by lightning, whatever, every scenario. And the reason I used to do it so many times over and over and over and over, different scenarios, was that, and by the way, at the end of all of them, I won. At every situation, I won the race. And the reason I used to do that, one, I wanted to visualize myself becoming an Olympic champion, regardless to how I got there. But two, my whole thought was whatever happens in the race, in the real race, won't surprise me because I've been through every version that could ever happen. So I wouldn't panic and start sprinting off quickly or chasing James for argument's sake, or think, oh, you know, whatever. It would relax. You've been through this before. You know what's going to happen. You know what you've got to do. Stick to your game plan. You know it's going to work, because the last thing you want to do, and pardon the pun, is start running somebody else's race. So,
nice.
You know, even in business, I liken that to, you know, we could have very similar businesses, and you do something your way, and I'm going, oh, what's those two guys doing? What? Oh, I'm going to do. Oh, he's bought a red car. I'm going to buy a red car because that looks like it's going to be successful. And all of a sudden, I come off my game plan and I start following yours, what I think you're doing. But I don't know what you're doing because I've not sat you down and said, you know, I want to know what your business inside out. Tell me everything, because we're competitors. You're not going to tell me. Likewise, you wouldn't tell me all your training and everything that you've done. We're friends, but we're also competitors. You know, so you've got to learn to, you know, plan your own plan, come up with your own, you know, your own process. Believe that you've got the right people around you to get the best out of you. Believe what you're going to do is good enough, and believe that you are good enough, and go with it.
Can we double click on this here? Because there, in this journey of building your process, one thing that uniquely strikes me about you, Derek, is you are an amazing beginner, right? Like, you have started and rebranded your career in athletics so many different times. Like, when I think of what, I mean, you just said kickboxing, you after you tore your hamstring, you played professional basketball, and then you got on a motorcycle, started racing motorcycles. You started a speaking business. Like, you've had many moments in your career where you've had to, like, come from being an Olympic world-class professional in one domain and start over as a beginner. And so when you approach a new task, let's say the first time you decided to get into the boxing ring, like, can you talk to us about the mentality specifically as a beginner? Like, how do you train your head to have the humility and the coachability to start fresh when you have so much muscle memory and success in other domains?
I don't go in as a beginner. That's the whole point. I don't go in as a beginner. You know, when I've been through all of the different sports, you know, when athletics, basketball, rugby, bit more basketball and rugby, then I got into racing motorbikes, and I got into kickboxing, and then into boxing. And every sport and even business that I go in with an aim of wanting to be the best at the level I'm at, you know, who I'm competing against, and I'll work my way up the same way as I did in athletics. And I don't go in with that attitude as a beginner. I am a beginner, and I respect that. And, you know, whether it was bikes, whether it was certainly the basketball and the rugby was a bit different because I'd played a lot of those beforehand. But, you know, learning to ride a bike in 1 year and then starting to race 2 years later was quite a sharp learning curve. But it was, for me, things like, let's take the bikes for argument's sake, and then we'll come on to the boxing. It was like, we'd be on a track day or a test day, and I'd be riding okay, thinking I'm going quick. And all of a sudden, some 14-year-old kid on a bike half the size of my bike would go, whoa, straight past me. And in my mind, wouldn't be, oh, what's he doing? It'll be, wow, how did he do that? You know, he's either on a similar bike to me, we both have the same limbs, or he's even on a smaller engine capacity bike to me. What is he doing that I'm not doing? And I must be able to learn what he's doing. So for me, it was always, how do I get, in that case on bikes, get my bike to do what he's doing? Because the bikes are capable. The bikes are capable. The tires, we've got roughly the same. Brakes are the same. Engines are roughly the same. Let's say they're both 1,000cc bikes. So our equipment is the same. It's just the lump on top that's stopping it performing the way that it should. And that's what always used to get me. So I never used to think like a beginner. I always used to think like a pro. And I would go to these guys and say, again, sticking with bikes, when you're going into turn one, you do, what gear are you in? Where are you? How, you know, where are you looking? What are you doing? This, that, and they'd tell me stuff. And because I was always willing to listen to these guys, I think one of the advantages I had is I never went in with, hey, do you know who I am? I'm Derek Redmond. Tell me how you. I'd go in as, how the hell do you do that? You know, give me a clue. I said, because the way I'm riding, I could get off my bike and run quicker than I'm riding. I need to get to the point where, and you know, I'd be just open, and they'd sit down with me and I'd pick their brains, but I'd never think like a beginner. I'd always think like I am already as good as them. I wasn't, and it proved it when they'd go past me in a 20-minute session 2 or 3 times, you know, but I got to the point where we would do a 20-minute session and they wouldn't go past me 2 or 3 times. So I also like challenges. I also like putting myself in that scenario to take on new challenges and new tasks. It's possibly the biggest area me and my dad disagree at. My old man says, the night before I had my first bike race, my dad phoned me up on the phone and I said, are you coming? He said, nope, not coming. I think it's a stupid sport. It's dangerous. I don't want to see you hurt yourself. I think you're too old to be doing this, Derek. You know, just settle down. You got kids, this, that. That's one part my dad and I disagree on. You know, he came to my first boxing match, and then I remember him a couple of days later saying, right, have you got that out your system now? Are we going to give that up? And then, you know, take up chess, take up something else. Just, you got that out your system? I'm like, no, Dad, I haven't. He's like, oh, well, you know, and because whether it's a generational thing, I don't know. But I love the challenges. I love the training and the preparation and the competition. And one of the big things with me, we have a great gym in our house, which I will be using today, but I do find it difficult to train for training's sake. I need an end goal. You know, my joke is, you know, I don't need to go to the gym and do curls for the girls. You know, it's not, you know, and I'm doing it now for sanity and to keep myself in shape until I can get back into boxing. But I couldn't just go to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week and work out and not have anything that I'm preparing for. That I find really difficult. And James, I don't know if you're like that. You know, as a triathlete, you train more for a reason than you do your health, I'm assuming.
100%. And then have you ever, you know, if it feels like, if you take out business, all your activities have been very physical, like very physical activity. Have you ever pursued a chess, like you mentioned, something where it's like, it's just pure your brain. There's like none of your quote muscles are actually playing a role?
Not yet. The closest to that has been golf. But that will come. I mean, it's not just physical challenge. I'm quite happy with mental challenges as well. But at the moment, and I'm of the opinion, while I can throw my leg over a bike, I mean, I don't race bikes, or, you know, step into a ring and compete and have some fun with it, I'm going to do it, because there's going to come a time when my body's going to say, no more. And I'm not going to be able to do it. And I don't want to regret not giving these things a chance. That's when I'll think about chess and other sports like that.
You know, Derek, you know, I want to dive back into your book and mentality and see if we can find a use case that I think is very important to a big following. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about race in business today. We're struggling as a Western economy to diversify our leadership ranks. And a lot of it is based on bias and maybe even self-confidence. You know, folks that are underrepresented in corporate America who may not feel like they belong. They may not see themselves in the work. So that visualization becomes harder. So what would be your message to these two demographics? A, to corporate leaders on solving issues of diversity and equity in the workplace. And then also to that, let's call that corporate athlete who may not see themselves, is having trouble visualizing themselves at the head of that boardroom and making a successful career. What would be some of the techniques or advice you would give to those folks?
Okay, let's start with the corporate athlete. And I love that phrase. You know, whether it's a corporate athlete or an athlete, you know, again, to me, it's the same process. You know, first and foremost, you know, I have a presentation. I have 20-odd different presentations, and I have one that I deliver to high school kids, and I call it the 5 keys to success. And I talk about the 5 basic keys you need in order to be successful. And the first one is basically to have a dream, have a goal, something that you aspire to. The second thing is you have to commit to that goal. And what do I mean by that? So if I said I need to lose, you know, a bit of weight, and I say to my wife, I'm going to lose some weight, and she said, yeah, okay, no problem. And she says, oh, would you like a donut and a can of Coke? I don't go, oh yeah, I'll have that. I'll start the diet tomorrow. I say, no, I've committed to it. So I commit to it. The third thing is you then need to be motivated. So whether it's someone in the world of sport or someone in the world of business that you look up to, whether it be a Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who seem to be the two most named businessmen in the last few months, you know, aim at the top. The next, the fourth one is, you know, other people, team, bring other people in, because you can't do these things on your own. And then we come to the fifth one, which is the most important. That's why I put it up. And that's self-belief. You have to believe that you can achieve whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's to be the head of a corporation and goodness knows what. Because again, people go, oh yeah, well, Elon Musk, it's all right. Well, why is it all right for him? Because he started with nothing. He's the equivalent of that young 14, 15-year-old kid whizzing past me on a bike. I want to know, how is he managing to do that? So he started with nothing. He was born and he couldn't talk. He couldn't walk. He learned to walk. He learned to talk. He wasn't born knowing all that he knows and have everything. He developed these things. So if he can do it, why can't anybody else do it? I know there's a lot of other situations, you know, that come into it, like opportunities and other things. But sorry, there is opportunity in the world for everyone if you're prepared to work for it and push for it. We all have 24 hours in a day. He doesn't have, or Jeff Bezos, or any other, I'm just using those two, Richard Branson or whoever, Warren Buffett, they don't get 26, 28, 30 hours in a day. They all have 24 hours in a day, the same as us. How you choose to use those 24 hours is down to you. So, you know, like a sportsman, the corporate athlete also needs to be focused and stubborn, you know, because you got to do what's right with you without, you know, being at the detriment of other people. You've got to make those sacrifices as you do in sport. You know, you've got to learn, develop, read, train as you do as a sportsman. It's no different. You have to put those, you know, earn those stripes and put that time and effort in. So that's hopefully has given people and yourself a bit of an idea on that. When it comes to diversity and inclusion, that's a huge topic. You know, I'll start off with a little bit of a story, which I think is a great story. And it's something my dad once told me. And as you get to know me, I quote my dad a lot. He's one of my heroes in my life. So I do refer to my old man a lot. And my old man used to be in the meat trade. He's pretty much retired now, dabbles a bit, but he was in the meat trade. He used to buy and sell meat processing equipment. And he used to travel the world, go into lots of different meats equipment exhibitions. And there's one in the UK used to be called Meatex. And he used to go there, and it was over a week or so, and he'd have a huge stand and all these machines and goodness knows what. within that exhibition, lots of things used to happen. And one of the things, it used to be the national final for the sausage competition. Now, this sounds crazy, I know, but they'd have regional heats all around the country leading up to this event, where these butchers would make these wonderful, weird and wonderful flavored sausages. And the finalists would all come together, and on one of the days at Meatex, they'd have the final would be there. And all these guys would be, will have to be there. They'd be like on a stage area, and they'll be cooking these sausages, making them from scratch, from grinding the beef or whatever it is, and putting all their ingredients in, cooking them. And then all these people in white coats with their clipboards will come around and they would mark their sausages. And my dad always taught me something. And he says, whatever you do in life, wherever you go, treat people like a sausage. Now that sounds crazy, and I'll explain why. And if everybody did this, there'd be no problem to diversity and inclusion. Treat people like a sausage. So in a sausage composition, once everyone has produced a sausage, every sausage has 100 out of 100 already. They're already perfect. And then as you go around and check the consistency, size, flavor, you then knock marks off. And it's the sausage that has had the least amount of marks knocked off is deemed as a winner. Now, the whole point to that is, as a human race, we are the kind of people that will preempt our thoughts of people before we've even given them a chance. We've already made our minds up on what we think of you, just on the way you look, dress, speak, your role, where you're from, all these things. Whereas treating someone like a sausage, actually let them mark you down. And I know it sounds, and I'm not saying you should go around jabbing a fork in people. So when we look at diversity inclusion, I do a presentation on this. And, first of all, most people don't actually understand diversity in its full form. There are 4 different levels of diversity, or 4 different types of diversity. Okay, so the one that most people will judge people on is what's called internal diversity. So internal diversity are the things that the 3 of us can't change. Our color, our sex, what we were born with. I know we can go down that route nowadays. Your sexuality, your where you were born, all these things, they're there. Where I was born was where I was born, and the same with both of you guys, our nationalities, all this sort of stuff, our heritage, where our parents, you can't change that. And that's generally what we are judged upon. But there's 3 other types of diversity. We then go to what's known as external diversity. Now, these are things that actually you have created yourself. So it could be things like the way you dress, your beliefs. It could be, I'm just trying to think of something else off the top of my head. Where you dress, your beliefs, religious, that may come into the 4th one. But anyway, these are things, your education, because you have the choice to become educated or not. What you're educated in is down to you. So these are things that you can actually change. And again, that can have an effect on what people think of you. The 3rd one is organizational diversity. Where you sit or where you stand within your organization. Are you the top dog? Are you the bottom dog, seen as the bottom dog? Your pay, what your job title, all these things. Are you part of the union? All these things come into what's known as organizational diversity. And then we come on to the final one, which is called worldview. And again, this is stuff on how you look at things. This is where religious belief comes in. This is where your political beliefs come into it. These are the things, this is where your morals and your own scruples come into it. And this is things that so there's 4 kinds of diversity. So for me, I would like people to understand that there are lots of different types of diversity. So the obvious one is black and white. There's a diverse difference there. But actually, if you take black and black or white and white, there's a huge diverse difference between those 2 people. It might not be from internal diversity, but certainly the second 3, whether that be external, world, or I forgot the one of this organizational, there could be differences in there. So I think if people had much more of an understanding that we are all diverse, none of us are the same. It doesn't have to be just on what you see on that first person. That's point number one. I think that would have a difference. And number two, understanding actually having all these people and with all these experiences, with this knowledge, with this different levels of education in different subjects. Surely if you can have a bunch of people in your organization that comes from all these different diverse directions and backgrounds to help make decisions, then you're going to got more chance of coming to a better decision for your organization as if everybody was from exactly the same, from that same pool.
Well said.
So for me, that's what diversity is about. And I know I've waffled on again.
Not quite all right.
But it's not a simple yes, no kind of answer.
Very fair. Very fair. Well, we're about at time here. James, did you have any other questions that you wanted to pose?
I think maybe for early stage professionals in their careers, obviously we've talked a lot about controlling what you can control, problems versus challenges, etc. Is there anything we haven't covered that you think, again, for someone starting their career, that you think would be just most powerful?
I think we've covered the majority of it. I mean, the one thing that I will say, and it's possibly the most important thing, and the main driver for anybody when it comes to success, is that self-belief, is believing that you can really achieve whatever it is that you set out to achieve. Because there are going to be times when you're going to feel alone, when everything is against you. You feel that whatever you do, it's going wrong. And I call those dark days. And we've all had them. I've had 2.5 years of them at one point in a complete, in a row. And the one thing that kept me going, more so than anybody talking to me, was the belief that if I could just, it was when I was competing, if I could just stay healthy, I'd be the best in the world, because I knew the ability was there. My competition wasn't the opposition. My competition was my own damn body breaking down all the time. And I believe that if I could stay healthy, I'd be the best in the world. And I had to rely on other people to help me stay healthy, but the belief was within me. So I think, for me, that belief in yourself is key, because that's the one thing that really will carry you through those what I call dark days, because you're going to have them, and sometimes it's the only thing you've got to hang on to stop you from giving up, is knowing, if I could just get through this again and get going, and whatever the case may be, I can get there. I've got a chance of getting there, and I could get to that first stage, and if I can get there, I can get to the second stage. So for me, that's one of the important things. And if you don't believe it in your heart of hearts, then I would politely suggest you're chasing the wrong dream. It's not something that you are, you're really. So that would be for me point number one. And not everybody has the fortune of having something that they're that passionate about. And that's tough. How you get that, it's because that's something that comes from in. And that's the tough thing. But if you've got it, use it. It's the most powerful tool you have in your armory.
Well, I tell you what, I'm fired up, Derek. You got me believing in myself right now. So gentlemen, we're at time. James, Derek, this has just been such an inspirational conversation for me to hear from two amazing athletes, being able to dissect a very iconic moment in Olympic history, and even just hearing how you translated those lessons from athletics into the business world. This was absolutely fantastically valuable for me, and I know for many of our viewers. So I just want to say thank you for making time for us today. So anyone out there, you can check out Derek. I encourage you to visit derekredmond.com. You can learn about his book, Business is Sport is Business, Business is Sport. Fantastic overview of many of the lessons we've learned. Check out his, he also does his leadership coaching on Airbnb as an Airbnb experience. I highly encourage that. And just in general, Derek is one of the most approachable, accessible people. He really believes, and he says what he means, and he means what he says, and he's out there with a very empowering message. So highly recommend him for all events, all teams, and definitely check out the book as well. Derek, thanks again for making time for us.
No, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you too, James. Really wonderful.